The rise of big tech that Gavin Newsom is complaining about in some ways comes at the expense of local news. And local news is what Americans trust the most, often local news on TV. The new FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, recently said we are at a break glass moment for America's broadcasters. They are facing unprecedented headwinds and competition, including from their largely unregulated big tech competitors. FCC Chairman Carr is with us now. Good to see you, sir. Thank you. What does break glass moment mean?
And when you step back, the FCC's had rules and regulations with respect to lots of different media over the years. And for a long time, we had rules, for instance, that stopped one person from owning a TV station and a newspaper in the same market. And during that time, newspapers were closing by the dozen all across the country. And we don't want to see the same thing happen to broadcast. What we need to do is move very quickly right now to make sure that broadcasters have access to the resources. Fundamentally, advertising is what supports local journalism. And as big tech companies have been rising, they've been taking so many of those local ad dollars. So the FCC needs to move now, not sit idly by. And if we do so, there's a very bright, energetic future for local news. And I'm excited about that. We just got to get some of the regulations right.
Okay, well, full disclosure, we're owned by Nexstar, the largest broadcaster in the country. We saw you just now on screen up on one of the towers there. Getting, I should say, hands-on experience is what broadcasting involves. Help us understand, though, you said the FCC needs to move quickly. What is the pushback to this? Because it seems fairly uncontroversial.
Yeah, there's a long-time view that you want diversity of ownership in media. And so there's been a policy predominantly backed by Democrats over the years that says you don't want any one entity to own too many radio stations. And I understand that in theory, what that's resulted in is we have all these stations that are underinvested in. For instance, we have the same thing on the radio side. You can be in a small town in this country and they'll have a Dell laptop pumping music in from Chicago because we don't want someone to actually own the station that will invest in it. And so you have these misguided views of diversity of ownership when the reality is we need to let some of these broadcasters get to scale so they can hire the local reporters. It costs money to produce local programming. And again, if you step back, there's a lot of distrust in media right now, but people love their local TV stations, their local TV journalists. So we need a regulatory framework that incentivizes that type of investment.
No, look, and that's how I came up, right, is through local news. It's how a lot of people came up. It's how you learn to be a reporter rather than just a pundit. There seems to be this combination of big tech, right, to this, that big tech's unregulated and broadcast is. Does that mean it's time to regulate big tech?
Well, we're taking a look at a lot of different options. Big tech companies, whether it's, Google or Meta, Facebook, they can obviously reach 100% of the country, but we have artificial constraints on broadcasters. In addition to that, we have all sorts of other regulations. I do think it's time to take a look at some approaches to big tech, including Section 230 reform. 230 is a piece of the Communications Act. It's a provision that a lot of tech companies use to censor Americans in their everyday speech. I think there's some steps that the FCC can take there. I think we can bring some greater transparency through the FCC to big tech as well. And recently I've been pushing back on some regulations abroad. Europe has this regulation called the Digital Services Act, which effectively requires censorship, not just in Europe, but potentially of platforms globally. That's a real big concern. I was just in Europe earlier this week pushing back on some of that sort of extreme censorship regulation coming out of the European Union.
That's a great point, because what happens in Europe then comes back here to America, because the big tech has to do sort of the most restrictive thing. Next time you come on, we're going to talk about tower climbing, okay?
Yeah, we have to do it. I was actually on a Nexstar tower there that you showed earlier, spending time with some of the tower crews that get these phenomenal jobs done, and I always love spending time with them.
Wow. Very, very cool. All right, next time we'll go up with you. Brendan Carr, FCC Chairman, thank you very much, sir. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.